All right, and welcome to the Uncomfortable Conversations podcast, the untold stories of the 3HO Kundalini Yoga community. My name is Guru Nishan. I started this podcast because I was born and raised in this community, and the people of our community matter to me. So I have several intentions that I'd like to share with you, and I share at the beginning of every podcast. So number one, the intentions of this podcast are to break the veil of silence that has long permeated and continues to strangle the 3HO Kundalini Yoga community in the name of neutrality. Number two, to validate and help clarify the complex feelings of those who have joined this lifestyle, were born and raised into it, and or have practiced or taught Kundalini Yoga. Number three, to encourage active listening to uncomfortable conversations from our community as a revolutionary act of self and collective healing. Number four, to let survivors know that we see them, we believe them, we love them, and we will fight for their truth to be addressed. Number five, to let teachers who are denying, gaslighting, or spiritually bypassing know that what they are doing is willfully ignorant and re-traumatizing victims. Number six, to illuminate the inherent racism, homophobia, cultural misappropriation, and exploitation that permeates the teachings, 3HO lifestyle, and overall community ethos. Number seven, to stop the perpetuation of gaslighting and victim shaming by naming it for what it is. Number eight, to dismantle internalized shame, guilt, toxic positivity, and light-washing mentality. Number nine, to honor all of the parts of ourselves that have been forgotten or silenced. Number 10, to honor every body that has come through our community, both named and unnamed. Number 11, to encourage people to do their own research, process their own emotions, get somatic therapy and other therapy or support as needed, draw your own conclusions, and be critical thinkers rather than just blindly follow anyone. Remember that your story matters. Please share it when you're ready. We're here to listen and to support you. Today, I want to welcome our guest for episode 12, our final episode of 2020. And his name is George Craig McMillian, also known as Kirantana Singh. He met Yogi Bhajan in 1971 when he was 23 years old and started taking classes at Santa Monica College at the back of, and in the back of Jules Buccareri's antique store, probably butchered that, on the corner of Melrose and Robertson. He became one of Yogi Bhajan's first bodyguards in Los Angeles and later for his wife, BBG. When the 3HO International Center on Pruce Road was created, Kirantana became the guard Sevadar at the ashram. This was also Yogi Bhajan's residence at the time. He patrolled the 3HO properties by night, slept on the floor in front of the ashram, led morning sadhanas, worked at the Golden Temple restaurant by day as a dishwasher and waiter. He lived at the Brentwood ashram in San Rafael. And then the Hargobind ashram in San Rafael. So Brentwood and then San Rafael. He became one of the first teachers starting the first 3HO prison teaching program in San Quentin. He can go on and on about how he actually then moved to Espanola and started running the 3HO drug rehab program in its last year before the government came and shut it down. After Kirantana left 3HO, he started doing private drug rehab work, then later created a unique style of PTSD yoga in Belgrade, Sarajevo, in the Bosnian war years. He taught in many destroyed cities in Bosnia, Croatia, and later Kosovo. He went on to teach in other war-torn countries such as Palestine and Egypt, and even ran teacher training in war-torn countries for free, provided by donations of friends and teachers all around the world. There's so much more to his journey, and he will share with us today. So I want to welcome Kirantana Singh, or George Craig McMillian. Thank you so much for being with us on today's podcast. You're on mute, so please unmute yourself. Hi, welcome.
Hi. Kir for short.
Kir, thank you. And you go by Kir now?
Yeah, Kirantana.
Kirantana. I totally butchered that. Kirantana. That's very nice. Thank you. So, wow. First of all, I know that you have a lot to share with us post 3HO, and I think that's a really welcome part of the conversation that I'm looking forward to today. But I do want to give us I do want the context of your early days of 3HO. So before even going into any of that, would you mind sharing with us why you feel it's important to share your story today?
The last day of the year, and I got to get moving. One of the nice things that one of the reasons I decided to do this with you is when we were talking, and we were talking about, we both have successfully moved on, and spent a lot of time with this community, and I let this go a long time ago. But when I heard that Primka put her book out, I knew what was going to happen. And so I let all this go 20 years back. But then both you and I said, but here we are, when all this came down, here we are. We do care about this community, and I care about the community very much, even though I've had nothing to do with them. And it was very peaceful to have nothing to do with them for a good 25 years, And now I have to, I'm recording more albums, and I have to get ready to go back to the Mideast. And so I really don't have time anymore to be in the Primka room and listen to all the stories and all that. And I wanted to leave something for people that how I healed myself from all this, and specifically what I did, after I left 3HO, after all the tragedies and stuff. And I thought, I know that in the room, everybody's sharing their stories, and there's a lot of very angry, people, and there's a lot of very hurt and damaged people. And I would never tell anybody how they're supposed to heal. Everybody's going through their own thing. Yeah. But I just thought I would just leave in there how I healed and went on and had a pretty successful career.
Awesome.
Well, I wanted to do that, get back to work.
I look forward to this, George or Kir, because when I read your story specifically, and this goes back to whatever, March, April of this year, I was so grateful to have such an early lens, and then to witness how you took what you learned and moved on with your sole purpose in the world. And that level of healing and the work you did for the listeners to be able to get that, I think can really support a lot of people today.
I hope so.
Yeah. So on that note, you came in very early. I know when you wrote this up, it was written in 3 parts. So we're just going to do the best we can to kind of give a recap of those early days when you first joined, leading up to what made you notice why you should go. So start wherever you're ready.
I was there pretty early on, but my first solstice was Mendocino. And I think maybe that was the 3rd solstice or something. But when I went back to Los Angeles and I became the bodyguard, I was living there at the ashram. And, a guard, it's your job to see what's going on and to be curious about everything. So I suspected that he was having sexual affairs with his secretaries. But as a guard, I didn't consider that really in my business. It was the way I looked at it was from his culture. Any rich Maharaj has concubines, and they were all adults. And so I just never really, I wasn't quite sure, and I knew, but I didn't really want to know. I was just doing my job. And then the first time that it really hit me in the head was a tantric course in San Diego. And I went down there, they asked me to be one of the guards. And somebody attacked him, before the tantric thing. And some guy who was in love with one of his secretaries, and we stopped him. And he was kind of shook up about it. So I was asked that night to guard sitting in front of his door where he was staying. And so I sat there all night, and that was the first time I heard him like putting the make on somebody. I didn't know who was in there, but I knew it was one of his secretaries, and I heard him, trying to hustle her. And I didn't want to hear that, but there was no denying it. So it's interesting. What I did was I spent all night and I wrote a song. That night, my first awakening to all that, I wrote one of the most popular songs that came out in 3H. It's crazy.
What song?
Huh?
What song?
Oh, it was just called The Odd Grade in May song. It was on an album I did way back in 75, I think,
Okay.
And so as it became more popular, I just felt this real strange dichotomy inside of me because, I kept remembering the night that I wrote it.
Mm.
And the stuff that happened with like all the young people in the second generation and everybody I've heard share in Primka's room, a lot, they weren't even born then by the time I already left. But, I went on and went back and I just, like I said, it wasn't my business. I didn't like it, but Yogi Bhajan with me was always very straight across, and he gave me what I needed to do what I wanted to do, and that's all I really cared about. That's all that was happening at the time. So he, in those days, was very adamant and said it all the time: no middleman. There should be no middleman between you and God. And he came out and he said, if you put a middleman between you and God, you're going to create hell for yourself. Mm. And that's exactly what happened. But I listened to him. He's a middleman, and I didn't do that. So when it all came down, I was hurt because it had to do with a woman that I was in love with.
Yeah, so pause, because I want you to give us that context. So at this incident in San Diego, you heard, standing outside the door, this is when you definitely know that's going on. You had already assumed it. There was another incident like that in San Rafael, right?
No, this was, her name's Karen Jote, and we lived together at the San Rafael ashram, the Hargobind.
This is the woman that you loved.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although, we never had a chance to get together. So Yogi Bhajan came to Hargobind, saw her, and wanted her as a secretary. So she took off. He went down to Los Angeles and she started living with them there. And then, I went on at Hargobind, and then I ran off, left the whole thing, went to Hawaii for a while. And when he came to Hawaii, he was looking for me. And before I go on, I should give one of those alerts. What do you call them? Alerts when you don't want people to freak out?
Trigger warning?
Trigger warning, yeah. I'm a mystic. I was not a householder Sikh. I was a sadhu, and most of my life I've been a sadhu. That means I wandered most of my life. I did when I was a child with my father, who was an army officer. So I had the time to do a lot of yoga, a lot of meditating. And I went and lived in the cave. It was kind of my natural environment. And I was in there meditating. And one day, and also at that time, I was quite stoned on mushrooms. So.
This is all while you're still a security guard.
No, I left after San Rafael.
Got it. Okay, but before you go into all that, I really want you to give us some context of what happened with Kiran Jote. Like when you wrote this, you really wrote it specifically, and the involvement of building the prison program. So like, can you give us some more kind of foundation levels of your time in 3HO and kind of what popped that? And then you chose to move on.
Yeah, I'm doing that.
Okay.
So this was after he came and took Karen Jote, and then I left. I just, I was having a hard time physically with Kundalini Yoga. I was having a lot of blockages. And I think that was because we didn't have a lot of ways to process emotions. And at that time, they really didn't have anything. Kirtan Kriya came later, and that was the only thing, Yogi Bhajan's thing was, if you turn emotion to devotion, and that was it. That was the only teachings we had. So I was having problems, and this wasn't working for me anymore, and I took off. So I had kind of a vision of him in the cave, and I knew he was in Hawaii. So I left the cave and I went to Oahu, and we hooked up again. And then he asked me to come back again to be the guard there in Los Angeles, and she was living there. And then what happened is, I went off to India with BBG, and she was engaged to a young man down there. He engaged her, a really good man, Baisab Dayal Singh. We all loved him, and then he died in a car crash. Oh, wow. So BBG and I took his ashes to India, and I was the Sevadar on that trip. And we went through all that, and as soon as I got there, I went to the first, Siskun Gurdwara there, and just blasted out. It was the first time I really heard the Gurbani really sung by professionals and people who've been doing it their whole lives. And I got really sick. And so I ended up, instead of being her bodyguard, she left me in Amritsar with Papaji, her Yogiji's father. And I went through I did a 40-day seva at the Golden Temple. I would be sick all day, and the fever would go away, and I would be ready to go clean the floors of the temple at night, at midnight. And that happened for 40 days. So I just like burned out all my everything. And then after that, I was becoming I definitely was turning more towards the Sikh Dharma. Up until then, I was just pretty straight Kundalini Yoga, nothing else. And then I came back. She came later at the end of the 40 days. The whole Sangat came to finally do the ceremony for Baisam. And she was on that group. And so the guy she had been engaged to was just, killed in the car crash. And so we met in Amritsar after all that. And we kind of fell back in love, So I thought, that this was going to go on. But what happened was people saw us talking together and stuff. And so we're immediately separated. And she got sent back to Los Angeles, and I got sent to New Mexico to run the drug program. So the first time, it wasn't that incident that made me want to leave 3HO. It was I was running the program, and I was just there in the last year and was already in shambles. And so they just handed me a big smelly albatross that was a wreck. And I had 8 young men that were there supposedly going through this program. The program on paper was a really innovative and good program. But what happened basically is that the ashram and Yogi Bhajan had stolen all the money for the program. It was a government grant. And they'd taken all the money and bought Peruvian Paso horses and land and whatever, and cowboy boots. And I didn't have enough money to feed these guys. I had a one helper, and he spent his time going to the markets in town getting throwaway produce. It was that bad. Wow. And then finally the inspector came and he saw what was happening, and he shut the program down. So, and they took these kids away, and a couple of them had to go back to jail. So I was pissed. I was really, really angry. And I confronted, we had a big meeting at the ashram, and they came down on me for talking to some of the teenage girls because they lived right across the street. We were in the Gold House in Espanola, the drug program. We had first it started way out in the desert, and then they shut that down because it cost too much money. And then they brought him back into the ashram grounds. And in this meeting in the ashram, they came down on me for talking to the teenage girls, you know. But these were all young girls I knew in Los Angeles and stuff. So it was like we were just friends. And they had a big thing. They were having a plague of couples cheating on each other, married couples and stuff in the ashram. So they had a big rule, you know, that the single men couldn't talk to anybody. And I said, this is baloney. So they called me out in the middle of the meeting in front of everybody, and I just blew, and I started screaming at them about the program. And I brought up all this stuff. The money was gone. Where's the money? You know, and you're coming down on me for this little crap. And it almost turned into a huge gang fight. You know, all the guards got really ticked off, and there was one guard who was having problems with his wife, and he got really ticked off. And we all started to go at it. And you know, other guards jumped in and broke it all up. And then after that, they didn't know what to do with me. So they put me on the council. And it was the first time I got to actually see how all the inners worked. And I saw for the first time that there was no freedom in thought or anything like that. It was one of the reasons I came into this was because the beauty of the Khalsa, that it was democratic. You know, we got rid of gurus, and this is what I believed. And then I saw that wasn't true. It was a monarchy, and then I was really insulted that they thought that I would just go along with this. You know, I was the way I felt. These kids had come to the house of Guru Ram Das for help, and they got treated like that, and then had to go back to jail, and I was outraged. So Yogi Bhajan knew I was going to, you know, after him and going to confront him personally. So he got out of there. And then I stayed for a while. And then I ended up back in Los Angeles as a Sabadar again. And she would, I was thinking about leaving, but I didn't know what to do quite, you know, and I had other ways of making a living, anything, so I wasn't panicked. You know, I was a musician and had other things to do. But I would read from the Guru Granth Sahib at night, and then she would come in from the back after I started reading. So I couldn't talk to her. She'd just sit there with me and wait. And then before I finished reading, she would leave. So I never got to talk to her, you know, and this was really strange behavior. And this went on for about a month. And then I went in and I went to Yogi Bhajan, and all the secretaries were there. And I said, I wanted permission to marry her. And they all flipped out. I mean, Yogi Bhajan went down a black hole and just like, you know, and the secretaries were, you know, and finally, I think it was Narayan maybe, she said, well, we'll discuss this and then we'll talk to you about it. I said, okay. So a week went by, and I was guarding on the street, and Kiriantana came out the side door of the ashram there, and she came to me and said, says, you can't ever ask that again. And that's all I know, you know, and she didn't say anything else. But when that meeting happened and they did that, I knew something was terribly wrong. I mean, I felt the knife just, and my aura was shattered from trying to figure out what was going on. And then finally, she just said, you can't ever ask that again. And that's all she said. And then she was like very tearful and stuff. And then she left behind her gate. And I said, but that's it for me, you know. After all this, I was ready to leave. And I did. And then I met a woman and I got married. And she was studying Kundalini Yoga. She wasn't really a 3HO person, but we were, you know, doing that together. And about a year after this incident at the gate with Kiriantana, probably a year went by, and she called me up. And then she told me the whole story. And that basically, you know, everything that Premka had said in her book. But we're talking about this, when all this came down, when Pripka came out with her book, I realized that this was the first scandal. You know, the first scandal was with me and Karen Joe, because Pripka hadn't talked yet.
Right. And what year was this about?
I'm really bad with years. Maybe 75.
About 75. So what did she end up telling you? For those that haven't read Premka's book, doesn't have the full scope, what did she tell you in that time?
That he forced himself on her and raped her and was trying to get her into other sexual relationships with the other secretaries. And she was broken, you know, and she was living all over the place on the streets and stuff, and you know, and trying to do the best she can. And it was a terrible, terrible meeting. You know, it probably wrecked my marriage, because I, you know, still loved her.
Yeah.
And I loved my wife. We were a great person, you know, and we stayed together 7 years, and we're still very good friends. But after all that, I just couldn't function. You know, I lost my sexual energy. I was very upset and kind of lost. But that woman, Nearbo, was, I don't know, she was kind of like sent to me sort of as an angel to keep me together. And we started studying martial arts together. And she was a professional mountain climber. And she was the first one that teach me how to do that and go out and live in the woods by myself for months at a time. And so we had a really wonderful 7 years. And, but then her father died, and she just broke. And then right after that, we split up. So that's the beginning. I was off on my own. I was wrecked. But I was a very disciplined yogi. And from then I went and studied with 2 Tibetan masters, you know, and Kalu Rinpoche is a wonderful man, one of the last of the cave monks, and and then the Dalai Lama, you know, initiated me into the Kala Chakra Tantra, and then Kaibaji Tetsing Setsrol Rinpoche was the one that the Dalai Lama sent me to. Dalai Lama was wonderful. He says, I don't really know anything about this stuff. You know, I'm just the head of the lineage. So I'm going to send you to a real yogi, you know. So I kept going. And then I started getting private drug rehab work, and made a very good living at that. I would actually live in people's houses, very rich people, and they would pay me to live there and get them off drugs.
Wow.
Hard job, you know, to live in somebody's house and tell them they're a jerk, you know. And I kept the yoga and kept my the one thing I kept from 3HO at that time was my yoga became very simple. Long Ekankars was my savior. Through all these years, that was my savior. Breath of fire, long Ekankar. And I did other things, but I was doing more martial arts at the time, and I was doing more Tibetan stuff. And then I was in the East Coast on Martha's Vineyard, and I was being courted by Sony Records. And while I was there, I saw an article about the Bosnian War, and it broke my heart. I still have the pictures. There's a picture out of the news of a little kid touching his father's hands through the window of the bus. They were taking the kid away because the Serbs were about ready to attack Sarajevo. And then another one about a week later, or no, it was about a month later, where the Serbs had come into the Bosnian territory. And there was the war started, and there was all these little kids in an insane asylum hospital for children. Kids who just weren't there. And the director of the hospital just split when the Serb army came and left them there. And so the UN soldiers finally showed up, and they found these kids had been sitting there in the hospital, you know, kids with no brains, so they're totally insane, with fighting all around them for like 6 days by themselves, trying to make it through themselves. So I was outraged, and I just said, God, I'll go. And then I forgot I said it. I didn't know what I'll do, but I'll go, you know. So a year later, Sony Records dumped me, and I was really upset. And I ended up going to Amsterdam to play with a jazz band there. And wherever I go, I kind of set up a class, a Kundalini class for just service, you know, and that started, and it filled up with Serbs and draft dodgers from the war. And we became really close friends. And they asked me to go to Serbia to start training the peace groups, the anti-Milosevic groups. It was Milosevic, the head of the Serbs, you know, pretty much started the war. And they asked me to go there. I was living in an apartment with in a room that I rented from a Quaker lady, and she wanted to go, you know. And so we took the bus and we went there, and that's how the whole thing started. And then we went different ways, and I kept heading further south, and from Belgrade, and went into was doing concerts at the refugee camps. A lot of young kids and stuff had lost their parents, and that was at the Hungarian border. And then the man who ran all that had a people that he was sponsoring down in Sarajevo, and he wanted me to go down there. And so I made it from there to Croatia, and then I was mind blown. From the bus from Zagreb down to Sarajevo was an all-day trip, and that whole day, looking out to the bus window, every single building along the way was blown up. It was like a total, really bad major war, and I'd never been in something like that. So I ended up in Sarajevo and met these people and started living with them and teaching classes. And they had never heard of yoga or anything. So it was like really a weird thing. And then the classes became popular. And what I didn't know was that before the war, the Serbs and the Bosnian Muslims and the Christians, they all lived together in the same town. It's like us living here next door to a Jew or Catholic or something, and everybody got along. But when the war started, it broke up along those lines: Serbian Orthodox, Croatian Catholic, Bosnian Muslims. But a lot of the kids and people remained in Sarajevo, and they were coming to my class. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that they're from the different warring tribes. So the UN came in and saw what I was doing, UN of Vienna, and they started paying me to do that. So wow, I said, this is really weird. And I've been the first Kundalini yoga teacher getting paid by the UN, and this was at the end of the war. It was kind of dying down, but you couldn't go outside because the snipers were still in the hills and stuff. It became very intense, and during that time, I was working with a lot of women who were been raped, been thrown in the rape camps, and the girl who had the house that I was living in was thrown in the rape camps. So I was working a lot with really traumatized people and shell-shocked young soldiers and stuff. And they didn't know anything about yoga anyway. So I developed this real easy style of basically Kundalini, a lot of breath work and a lot of easy movement and pushing them really hard. But there, I really went back strong into Kundalini yoga because it was such a depressing place, and there was a lot of suicide all around me, and I was getting fallen apart. And I went back to Long Neck on cars, and it totally saved me. But it was intense, the people dying around you, and sometimes I'd have to chant up to 8 hours a day.
Wow.
To keep my aura.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I'd be useless. I was getting depressed, and But that's when the yoga really took off for me. And I started having all the experiences that people want to have when you do that. And it worked. It worked magnificently. And telepathically. I should give my little alert, so no one gets upset for the mystical stuff, but it did. But you just have to put your time at it, And in war zones, you can't talk to people about healing. You can't do psychotherapy. They're so angry and they're so upset. But at night, I would do my healing practices and send it to certain people I'd meet in the city and stuff. And the next day, they always knew. They always knew. So it took a long time before we could even talk about this stuff. But the meantime, they're coming to classes, and I'm like supercharged because I'm doing up to 8 hours a day. Some days, not all days, but no, never any less than 3 hours a day. Yeah. And finally, the everything opened up, and I was awake, like 24/7 for the next 8 months. That means my body slept, but I was there in the city, just chanting Nam, but not chanting Nam. Chanting Nam is sort of a symbol for what they mean is the Nam is everything. It's just this vibration, and so when they're talking about chanting Bani and all that stuff, they're talking about the sound, the Nam, becoming one with that and letting it move through you. Mm-hmm. And it started doing that, and it started getting very popular. And that's how I started that whole thing. Wow. And developed that yoga. And then later, Kosovo, and up in Croatia and Tuzla, where a lot of I was teaching in places where people didn't really understand what a horrible war it was. The places where they were taking old people and breaking their legs and feeding them into timber mill saws. Just absolute brutality from the Middle Ages, because they invoked that. The Milosevic and the Karadzic, the head of the Bosnian Serbs, was a psychiatrist, and he knew all about hypnosis and controlling people's minds and stuff. And they're invoking energies from the 14th century, when the Serbs had to fight the Muslims, and they were like, remember what the Muslims did to us in the 14th century. We're going to get them back now, that kind of insanity.
Right.
So I just did my yoga, and there were times I was honestly, felt a little guilty. I was so blissed out, and everybody around me was so miserable. But that's what I had to be effective, and it was just a matter of, for those months, just sending that vibe out all the time in the city, and it worked. Things started changing. You visualize what you want to happen, and you put that energy behind it, and it happens. Because war and all the stuff they do it's just a knee-jerk reaction. There's no mind behind it. It's what they've been doing forever. So when you're starting to do tantra and you're really deep in the chants, you're acting by choice and volition. All that other stuff that goes on in the politics and everything we've been doing that for thousands of years. And so it's like, there's no mind to it. There's no awakening to any of those actions. So if you chant that long enough and you start doing the yoga intensely like that, you realize that when you do something by choice, it is much, much more powerful than all the politicians, all the armies in the world. And slowly, the NATO troops came, and the I4 came, and I was actually starting to teach them too. They wanted some kind of program where the people could meet, the people in the city could meet the soldiers coming in and stuff. So it was a very wonderful situation. And during that whole time, I developed my own kind of style of doing it. I just call it Kundalini Core Foundations. And
Would you mind explaining a little bit about like what you felt like was the core versus all the excess, or do you want to get to that a little later?
no, I'll do it now. The core, all the stuff that's going on in the rooms, everybody's looking for the pure yoga, and Yogi Ji made all this up, and so it's no good. Yoga, Kundalini is about moving breath and compression. That's it. It doesn't have to be any more complex than that. And so if you understand the basics of your locks, and I would do like an hour of breath of fire, and then I ground it with frogs, and then I'd start my long Akankars. And they just open everything up, and you see everything you need to know, and then you make it up from there. Once you understand how the Kundalini works, you can do whatever you need to do with it, and you can make up your own stuff. And then really, that's what you should do.
Yes.
One of the gifts, that I was always thankful for, to Yogi Bhajan for, was that in the beginning, in the early days, before there was any, everything went wacko, my first encounter with him was, I met him. After I met him at a meeting of the ways, I met two other people that I studied. I first started with Dr. Swami Mishra and Swami Satchidananda. I met all three of them together in Los Angeles at a meeting of ways thing. And I went to talk to him, and I said, I want to do this and this and this. And Yogi Bhajan said, just zip it, and he says, go and do 2.5 hours of long Akankars for 40 days, and then we'll talk. So when you get, if you do that, your Kundalini comes up and you understand it from the inside out. And he did that to a lot of people in the beginning days. And a lot of those people, that's all they did. They finished that, but there was no teacher training. You had the basic classes and stuff. And after they finished 40 days of doing that, you sent them off to go start their own, things. And, these people in the beginning went off and started teaching in parks, and 2 years later, they had whole empires and stuff. And to me, it was all what was released from that chant. It was powerful, and it really had an effect. And 3HO grew from a gathering of pretty spaced out hippies, to a worldwide organization in just a couple of years.
Right.
And he got everybody off drugs. He got everybody off welfare. There's a lot of good things that happened. It wasn't all bad stuff. And that ability to be able to do that when I needed to be able to sit down for 2.5, 3 hours and do that, saved me through all those years. It saved me through the depression after what happened with Karen Jobe. It saved me in the middle of wars. In fact, that's why I went. I was just, wandering around. I took in jobs. I was singing in bars, doing that, still doing sadhana, and took various jobs. And then what finally made me make the decision when I was in Amsterdam to go was that, I want to test this yoga. I want to see if it really works. Either that, or I'm just not all that happy with my life, but maybe I can go die in a noble way. So it was either one of those two things. And you're in the middle of a war zone, and I've learned all about aura, and you can do just pretty much anything you want, anything you can imagine, once you've got it all cranked up and moving. But the problem nowadays is that the people won't push it that far. And, I don't think in teacher training, they make them do it 2.5 hours, maybe once. Where we were, the whole beginning years of 3HO, we were doing that as our morning sadhana.
Daily. It was standard, right?
Yeah. And so you have to really do it. I think 3HO really shot itself in the foot when it started making teacher training their cash cow. And, they really lowered the standards. The people don't get a third of the training we got in the ashrams. And we had the Guru Granth Sahib, we had Seva, we had all these other things that later became a big, big part of my life as I became more Sikhi.
So just for clarification, George, like I know you're referring to the Premka group page, and for listeners, for those of you that don't know what that means, there's been a private Facebook group that in a matter of months grew to like 5,000 plus members. And this was a part of the forum that over the last year, you know, in March when Premka's book came out, or Pamela Dyson's book came out, this was the place that it started opening up, conversations were being had. And a part of the birth of this podcast was to move it out of private, secret places and to make these stories publicly available, because I know how much they were breaking me open to a much larger tapestry. But I'm bringing that up to say there's, you know, people trying to reconcile what's real, what's not real, all the things, and their approach to their own practice now or to their teaching or whatever. And do you want to lend a lens of like, what do you feel? So yes, those early days had some foundation practices, but can you give us a little more, give listeners a perspective of how does one start to distill what feels like foundational real stuff versus all of the predatory mysticism that's wrapped up in Yogi Bhajan's agenda within the teachings?
Well, I was able to do it in the beginning, in the first place, because I listened to him. He said, don't put a middleman between you and God. And so, plus Yogi Bhajan was only one of 3 Kundalini teachers I had. Okay. So I was never really hung up on that system. And, but I found, in the beginning days, I didn't know anybody who thought of becoming a hotshot teacher. You know, we didn't do this to become teachers and make a lot of money. At least everybody I knew. We wanted God. That's why I was in it. I was raised to be a Catholic priest, and when my family left the church because of, you know, when my parents got divorced and stuff. And but I still wanted that, and I started doing that. You know, that was the beauty of him pushing right from the beginning, before I did anything else, being pushed through 2.5 for 40 days, 2.5 hours. And then I got sick on the 39th day, and I only did 2 hours. And on the 40th day, I only made it through an hour. So I went back to him and told him, okay, I finished. And he goes, did you do it perfectly? And I said, no, I got sick on the 39, 40 days. He says, do it again. So I did it again. That's how I got started training. And that was the intensity of training in those days. And so that's what I'm saying. If you had an experience of Kundalini, you knew what it was, and you knew it was baloney, and you knew it was lies. And me as a bodyguard, that just amplified my perceptions. And you do get telepathy. You do get very psychic, and that's what a guard does, you know. And you have to. It's not if you, at least in this situation, if something comes down, you're too late already. The job is to perceive something's going to happen before it happens. So you're in the mystical, you know, and it was kind of natural to me. So when I got to the room here, and the room opened up, and I started listening to everybody's stories. I know Premka was shocked. Nobody knew anything, you know, all the stories of the young people, and I certainly didn't.
Like all the kid stories and stuff.
Yeah. And then a lot of people got really, or they're, you know, you've heard of, they're really angry at the yoga. The yoga doesn't work. He made it all up. It was stuff. Well, that didn't mean anything, because I was making it all up too. But I was making it up according to the situation I was in. And to me, that was the core of knowing the reality, is that I found I had to put my butt on the line. You know, when you're really on the line, and you have to come up with stuff that's like saving your life and saving other people's lives. Mm-hmm. It's there. It works. It's I think the trick of the whole thing is that you have to totally show up and do believe in the supernatural. When I didn't know what to do, I would just do that meditation expecting that angels, whoever, whatever, would come and tell me what to do, and always did. Got out of amazing situations. Later, I started training young people who were coming out of peace study colleges from America, and they were being sent to war zones for the first time. And I had to train them. Use these young, pretty arrogant kids, with college degrees who'd never been in a war zone. And I was training them basically not to get themselves killed and all my other people killed. And so when it's that edgy, and I was developed after the months of doing the long neck on cars, I developed my own little meditation called I'm going to die in 5 minutes. So everything I do in yoga is like, if I know I only have 5 minutes to die, I'm not going to let my mind wander over the place. And how long is a second taking off? And I got to do this, so I got to go out teach a class, and I'm going to be a great teacher and all that stuff. If I only had 5 minutes to live, what would I be thinking about? Man, it's just me and God. And so I developed, that was very much part of the getting in my style to people who were in life or death situations. And it became very successful. And also a lot of people I sent home. They would get there and they would start this, I don't know why I'm here. I'm just looking for myself, and I believed, I want to do a good thing, but I got all these doubts. I don't know if I can do it myself. And I go, look, that's fine, but you should have done that before you came. You can't do that here. You'll get killed if you do that here. You got to pay attention with your whole being. And that's what was beautiful about the yoga, is that in a short amount of time, people who had never relaxed their whole lives, in an hour class, I could get them to completely flatline their nervous systems, and have an experience of something else. And that's the way I always taught, was that I believe that I just taught it as a science of the nervous system. And I said, I didn't really push Sikhism or anything other than that. And I was dealing with a lot of Muslims, and they don't want to change their religion or anything like that. And so I after I taught them, I would say, okay, now make it your own. And we go through the Quran and go through the 99 days of God. And I changed all the mantras. I said, pick your own mantras. I taught them with the mantras we learned, so they understood how it worked and how to hold the power and all that stuff. Once they understood that, I say, now make it your own mantras. And but it was always with that intensity. You've only got 5 minutes to get this done. You've only got 5 minutes to connect to God. You don't have to do 40-day kriyas. You don't have to go on it. You can do it anytime you want. In fact, one time I was reading the Guru Granth Sahib in a Kampath, so I couldn't stop. But I came across this line that says, if you want God, why haven't you done it? And I'm like reading, like, what? Well, because I was too busy doing 40-day kriyas, and wondering when the big flash would come and all that stuff.
Busy following the rules rather than critically distilling information. Let the information come in and distill through your own soul experience, and then redeliver that information into the world.
Yeah. So I'm not pushing. I was made for this. I came from a military family, and I grew up with the whole thing. So I'm not suggesting people go off and go to war to be able to build this intensity. But I do tell them that you find your own way of doing that and some other things. You start an innovative program. You do something you've never done before.
Yes.
That's when I went to Palestine 2 years ago. I had no idea what I was going to do. I was, okay, here's a mystic alert. I'm doing my life here in California, and I just get the, what you call it, vibe.
Yeah.
From Guru Tegh Bahadur. And he'd never really come up in my meditations before. But I always loved the guy. When I was in Amritsar, before the temple got blown up, there was a little temple for Tegh Bahadur at the front there. And I used to meditate there all the time. And so I felt the closest with him. For people who don't know, Tegh Bahadur gave his life to protect the Hindus. And that became a core foundation of the Sikh faith, is that the Sikhs, they are not there just there for themselves. They're there for everybody and to protect everybody. So he got beheaded for that. So I just got this idea, go to Palestine, go to Gaza, go to Yemen. And I'm like, God, what are you, these people are killing each other. I don't want to go do that. But it doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. So all right, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I just said, the only thing I can think of was just go there and do something I've never done before or that has never happened there before. So I got there, and the only thing I could think of was Nitnim. and I'd never, done Nitnim there before, and no
Dutchy or reading the entire Nitnim?
The entire Nitnim.
Okay.
Yeah, over the years, I never left reading the Guru Granth Sahib. I certainly wasn't a fanatic Sikh, and I didn't get into the Nitnim, maybe till just 4 or 5 years ago, where I really got serious about it. And that really saved me too, because I didn't become Sikh or Amritdhari because I was looking for God. I already had that. I always had those experiences. But I have a life of war. I'm always fighting something, fighting people like Yogi Bhajan, what he did, and people like that, and crazy politics, and that's what the Sikhs did. And it was kind of natural for me. So if you're going to fight and you're going to be at war, you want to be with the Khalsa. I can feel those brothers and sisters, and that's the big gun. But we don't fight with sword and shield anymore. So when I do that Nitnim, I'm swinging swords. I'm swinging, I'm sending that energy out with the sound.
Mm-hmm.
Sound. And so when I learned Nitnim, I never even learned the English translation for a couple of years. I was so fascinated with the sound. And it's a yoga in itself.
Yeah.
When you're moving your jaw, to
the roof of the mouth, and the it really creates a sound.
Pumping that cerebral spinal fluid, and your brain is like, woo, woo. And that's a whole yoga. Once you get all that moving, that'll take care of the whole rest of the body.
That's right.
So I really got into it, and as a musician, I started to understand the genius of the Sikh gurus. I didn't really like the music for many, many years, and then slowly started seeing what it did. But if anybody's read, the Dasam Granth, there's a lot of beautiful poems from Guru Gobind Singh about Durga and swords. So he was really into Durga. And Durga, was bloody. Durga stomped people, but did it out of love so they could be reincarnated into better situations. And I began to see, all this that the Guru Gobind Singh was doing was just a continuation of that energy, but now it had been passed, to these people to do that. So I started to do it like that. And anyway, I ended up doing that in Palestine, in the midst of 3 Muslim mosques. And I said, no Sikh had ever been there and done those chants. And that's all I knew to do. As soon as I did that, mystic alert, everything came to me. I met the 2 most famous girl warriors in Palestine. One's known all over the Islamic world and stuff. And they started taking classes with me. And the whole thing took off. We started getting money to pay us. I didn't have the money to go. I just went with a few $100. Money started coming in from people, students from here, in California and stuff. And it just all flowed. It went perfectly. And that's what happens. So that's how it's the yoga is real, is you test it. First of all, you have to have I don't know. It's got to be something, for me, it's got to be something more than thinking of making a living.
Yes.
It's got to be something more than that. And that 5 minutes to live, I just kept thinking of Guru Tegh Bahadur. If it's got to go to that, okay, it's got to go to that. But it went completely the other way. It went blissful, and everything I needed came to me.
Yeah.
And that's the way it works. you really have to put your butt on the line before it takes off. It's your intention that releases the Kundalini. And then,
well, and I think also you're pointing out a very important point. Like I teach through this lens as well, more like as a nervous system. I've never called it as taught by the initials. I just wasn't ever into that. But specifically on the nervous system and the pressure release, or what you called compression, creating that using the body as a hydraulic system to divert and move stagnant energy into a new form of energy. I mean, that's essentially what we're doing within our own system, which then changes the spinal serum of the brain. And that's not something that he invented. This is ancient science that just happened to be delivered through lots of different teachers along the way.
right. And I do, there's maybe 5 things left from 3HO that I do in Kundalini Yoga.
Okay.
And they were all basic. You can find them in a lot of different cultures.
Cool.
And that's the beginning of it, and then I, changed my chants according to where I am or what the situation is.
Which I love, because I've talked about that too, is that what we're talking about is nod or sound current, and there's sound currents that aren't Gurumukhi. There are other sound currents that also create vibrational frequency. And so you can adapt that. So I love that about what you're sharing is you teach it, you teach the foundations, and then you're telling people, make it your own, adapt it to your culture, adapt it to the way that your students will receive it and need it based on their lives.
Yeah. But what releases the whole power is you got to step over the line. You got to commit to you have to have a reason to be doing this. And if it's something that I would have given my life for those people, I fell in love with them. And when you fall in love with them and you look at this, the lines in Japji in the beginning, where Guru Nanak says, how does a person on this earth become happy? Only by finding your preordained destiny. And the more I began to meditate on that, I said it wasn't like preordained in that God is, putting you in this and it's all preordained and you've got no say in this. It was like I was having experiences like I was there in the beginning. I chose to do this, or I was there with God and we chose together to do this, or mystical, or people don't like that talk. But when you're in it, you're holding on to anything. And it works, and you see it. The result of this was that I really learned what Kundalini was. Kundalini is not the breath and the kriyas and stuff. It's just prep. But Kundalini is honor. Honor is a gift you give yourself. You give your word and you keep it. You go say what you're going to do. You become fearless to step over the line, and then you do that and you follow it through and you see that seed planted. That's what raises your Kundalini. You walk around with it all the time. You don't do an hour class. Okay, my Kundalini's up, and then you go home and watch stupid news, or gossip, and that's what does it. So it was that as I started reading more, becoming more Sikhi, it was that I had done those things and I was proud of it. There's pride is the negative side of it. The positive side of that, what we're talking about, is honor. And that just means following through. And then that's the gift you give yourself for the rest of your life, for not the rest of your life, for the rest of other lives. Sorry, mystic alert here.
Well, I think it's important to understand that there's a lot of beauty in mysticism, and then Yogi Bhajan also used mysticism as a way to weave falsities through the teachings and in people's lives. And I think decoding that is important when we're really dealing with mysticism.
That's absolutely right. And that's why, to me, I can very easily separate the yoga from Yogi Bhajan. It really has to do with who's teaching it, and there are, the way 3HO does it, he's the master, And there's a lot of masters around, but real masters don't care if anybody knows that they're a master.
That's right.
Master's just doing it. You do your duty, and it's quite simple once you get all that lined up. So, but the result of that was because I was raised Catholic, and in Sikhi too, forgiveness is a big thing. There's lots and lots of lines in the Guru Granth Sahib about forgiveness from Nanak and Arjun and Kabir. But you can't just forgive. If you've been damaged like some of these second generation people and stuff, I would never say, okay, you got to forgive, icky sweet kind of thing. No. It doesn't work. It happens by I went out and I made my life first. I made my life. I took what I did, which was just years and years of Kundalini Yoga, and I put it into situations where people had never done, what I'd done in Kundalini Yoga. And I felt that started to heal me. Mm. So I went back and I said, my life is really good. I'm a really happy, complete person. That means when you look back, everything that happened to me made me who I am. So I couldn't hold on to the anger, but like I said, he gave me everything I required of a teacher. I didn't require his bullshit, but what I required was no middleman. And the last teaching he gave to me before it was actually in our last argument. When we split up finally, it was like 5 hours, eyeball to eyeball.
Really?
Yeah, yelling at each other. And then we were kind of exhausted. And then we went back to, okay, I've known you for so many years, and we're kind of, we know each other and we could talk. And he gave me like my last hookum. He says, I know you're leaving. And the hookum was, go find out what character is and what Khalsa is. And so character, that's a big subject. And that's how I went off into the world as a sadhu. And so the pushing me through the 2.5 hours of long neck on cars, I had it. I knew how to do it. I had no excuses. It was, if it wasn't happening to me, is because I was lazy and I wasn't doing it. And the last teaching, in that last conversation with it was, learn to forgive instantly. Oh my gosh, and then from Catholicism, like the Christ said, learn to forgive 70 times 7. And he said instantly. And that was a big one. I didn't know how to do it. So I had to do all this other work. I made my life first to be able to even think of what the forgiveness would be. Mm-hmm. And I always took it, everything I see is like fighting to me, sword fighting, or I began to understand what he meant. That, like when you're in martial arts, you're practicing being attacked by 4 people. The person comes and you handle it, it's gone. And then you go to the next one, you handle it, it's gone. You handle it and it's gone. You can't hold on to anything. You just can't hold on. You're always at the tip of the sword, never knowing what's going to happen. And that's where your whole attention has to be. Mm. Otherwise you get killed. So that's the way he was saying to me, that's life is going to come at us so hard. Everything that's happening to us now, and so fast. The only way you're going to get through this is let it go as fast as you can and move on to the next. Start thinking about how I'm going to change this, not how bad I was fucked over, You get wasted in that, and then someone gets you from the side.
Right.
That's an alert too, I think, in martial terms.
Yeah, like a real martial arts or warrior perspective on it. I think it's a really beautiful.
So I was able to let it go and forgive him. And I didn't, it was for me. I think he's going to have his karma to deal with, Karen Jote died, and then he died. And then I think he's dead, she's dead. What am I holding on this for, So it wasn't hard to do, but to forgive One time he came to me, mystic alert, he came to me in a dream, shaved and bald. That was a mind blower, because it was like instantly, he was telling me all, whatever you've gone through, that's all gone. It was all the past trauma had to do with the whole being, the Sikh thing, and him and his beard and his turban, and, the power and all that stuff. It was all gone. Mm. And I began to see, I have a relationship with this, this kind of teachings for a long time. And in the Guru Granth Sahib, when they talk about getting off the wheel, what does that take? It takes everything, and it's worth everything. So the way I began to see, after I had made my life and I had the strength to like just be here in the now, living my life, looking at what I want to create, not being a victim, I found there's nothing passive in Kundalini Yoga to me. It's like I don't believe in this acceptance stuff. It's like I don't accept anything. I accept my own rage when I'm pissed off.
Yes.
And I learned the Kundalini, how to channel it. I said, you don't do it with sword and shield anymore. I do it with sound. Mm. But I don't ever want to lose that ferocity. That's what it gave me. Mm. So everything that happened ended up giving me abilities in the work that I do today. So at some point I had to let go of all the, like, my life is really good now. And I had to let go of the anger. And I did. And then that dream happened. And then that was it. That was the end of it. Mm.
And so the only reason you even came back into this conversation is because Pamela Dyson released her book, and then the Facebook group opened, and you are obviously, Dr. Alexander. So like they'd pull you, like, here is the conversation. So you joined it?
Yeah. Same reason you did. It's like, I care about these people, but I get a little upset in the room. Not really, because I realize they're doing their healing.
And they're in their own process and awakening aspect. Every stage of this is so unique. And if that means people have to put it all aside forever, bless them. And if it means a different level of distillation and processing, bless them too, right?
Yeah. But I just wanted to leave this here, that this is, you can actually do this, and this is the way it worked. Here's a story that I held on to over the years, about it being raised as a Christian. We have this story of Lucifer, and Lucifer in the Christian story was, he was the high angel, and then he blew it and he got kicked out, and God created hell. And that's, I think, it's just a separation, this good and bad thing. The Sufi story is very different. Mm. The Sufi story is God is by himself. So he creates Lucifer as his first creation in order to have a sense of, love, worship. And then later he creates mankind, and he tells Lucifer, I want you to serve mankind. And Lucifer says, no, I won't. You created me only to love you and to serve you, and I won't serve mankind. And then the story goes, it was God who got angry and blew it and created hell, which is Saturn for them, and threw Lucifer out. And then as Lucifer's leaving, he turns around and he says, just remember that this mankind will forget you. But I love you so much that when they do forget you, I'll make their life so miserable for them that they have to come back to you.
Interesting.
Get what I'm saying? They're in cahoots. In order to bring it back to unity, Ek Onkar, you got to get over this, that everything happens to further your soul if you use it. What should it cost to get off the wheel? Yes. We as a species are trained to worship the king and bow to the king and take all everything comes from the king. You don't even think for yourself. The genius of Guru Gobind Singh was he stepped down from the guruship and says, now you be the guru. Mm-hmm. The guru is the Khalsa, and it's democratic. that was the huge gift. That changed the whole history of the world, and religious world.
Mm.
And but if you don't do it, you know, because we've been stuck in this for mystic alert lifetimes, you know, and that's a big thing to get rid of, to like step up and say all the worship and all the you know, all the adulation we give these gurus and all that stuff. Now give it to yourself, or be that yourself. Be everything that you think those people are supposed to be. No, your responsibility is for you to be it now. That's a big thing to give up. And if you don't do it, you'll get beat up. You get slapped around. So this is how I dealt with it in myself. But that wasn't even enough. I had to go make my own life first before I could get to the place and just let it go. That's what I wanted to say. I mean, if whatever people have to go through, take your time, do whatever you need to do. But at some point, whether you're, you know, 6 months or 6 years in therapy, it doesn't matter. There's some point that comes along where you have to finally use your will to just stop that. Stop that thinking, stop thinking about it. I would be listening to these stories in the room like, how are they going to do that? It's like they just keep bringing up all the worst and worst stories and listening over again. If you want to forget Yogi Bhajan, you know, they just keep bringing it up. And in the most horrible stories, it wasn't all horrible if you had taken the whole thing and you can get off the wheel. Once you get screwed over by someone like him, and he's a big demigod, he was.
Yep.
Nobody can fool you after that. Nobody. I see them coming 6 months and miles away, and I've already figured out something to block it and defeat them. That was the gift from all this. So everything that happened to me gave me a gift to be able to do the life I do today.
Yeah, beautifully said. Beautifully said.
That's really what I wanted to say.
And I think it's such an important message. But I also think what you're saying in terms of the time frame, you don't just jump to forgiveness. And I think that's where spiritually bypassing comes in, as people, we try to like jump right to, and that's not how it works, because the memory lives there still. We have to, that's where you're saying, have the life, go take what you learn and bring it to the world, have your life experience, and let your experience distill the meaning, which brings you to forgiveness, if that's a part of your path. At least that's what I'm hearing from you.
Yes, absolutely. And that's called grace. You know, the Catholics would say,
yeah,
sometimes it's impossible to forgive things that happen to you. You don't have the ability to forgive them, you know, and it's impossible. So that's how the whole thing works, is that you have to call on grace to come help you. You have to call on spirit and grace to come and help you do it. And that's what is making your own life, to me, that's calling on grace, because you're always going into the unknown. You don't know what's going to happen. So you always have to keep trust in each moment. That's the life of a sadhu. A sadhu gets up every morning and just goes, all right, God, what do you want me to do? That's the only plan you have, you know? And I got really good at that.
Show me the way. Well, I want to bring that up briefly, and that, you know, there's all these things Yogi Bhajan taught that contradicted, and a part of, I think, our work is to really distill, like, what is the resonant meaning for me? And if I don't find that resonant meaning, I just get to discard that. So one of the things that have stood out in my life is, this is a self-exalted experience, similar to what you're saying, right? There's no middleman, right? And that's what he said. This is self-exalted, and there's going to come a time where that external world is so much full of pressure, we have to know how to internally regulate. And that is a power, and the way that I bring that through my work, that I don't think anyone has the ability to cultivate it except in themselves.
Absolutely.
And to me, that's the power of Kundalini, is that's our energy. And we get to learn how to harness and utilize our energy to be able to have more power than we've ever been led to believe in just this physical body, through the energetics, through our whole being.
And you don't learn that in teacher training.
No,
you learn it by going out and doing it. You know, you learn the basic tricks. There's a lot of great stuff in there for keeping healthy, keeping your sanity. So I basically use it. I'm so sensitive to the world and psychic It's like I had to learn to create a shield so you can regulate. You learn to regulate how much you'll take in, how much you push out.
That's right.
You know, I learned to push out when I'm in a war zone, you know, but I was dealing with the way I took all those Kundalini principles is that things were coming at me so fast. You're dealing with a little child, you know, who lost their parents. Next minute you're walking out the door and you're talking to somebody, you know, you turn your back and they'll kill you. You know, I was like using mantras and things from all different, you know, groups and stuff. For this situation, I'd use this mantra. In this situation, I'd use this mantra and stuff. One day, I just went, who is it who's making the decision? It was like putting on a coat and taking that coat and putting another coat on. Who's making the decision to put on the coat and when and how? I was.
Yeah.
You know, and that was the enlightenment.
Yeah.
It was as simple as that.
And I just think the point you made that, you know, the goal wasn't to become super rock star teachers and get all the followings. And I think that's been what has perpetuated over the decades. And now there's kind of this like superstardom teacher energy, and there's followings, and the teacher trainings are exorbitantly costed. And, you know, so it goes into like all the levels of misappropriation. And I want to encourage listeners to just say, you know, distill it down to basic principles and realize that, you know, he added all the things as people were putting him in between them and their experience with God.
Yeah. And I took care of that early on because I saw where it was going. And I didn't want to be, like I said, I was a sadhu. It was more my nature to do that and not be a householder.
So give us a perspective real quick, because I know you wore 3HO Sikh garb, right? So you were wearing white and a turban and stuff like that. But while you were in 3HO, did that change? Did you stop wearing the uniform and change while still connected, or did that come later?
No, that came later.
And then, yeah. Well, sorry, did you want to finish?
No, that came later. That's it.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you were going on. You had a 3HO name that I don't think I ever got. Is that correct?
Hari Shabad Singh.
Hari Shabad Singh. So for those of you that...
Shabad Singh Khalsa.
Okay, Hari Shabad Singh. Thank you.
Yeah, and I did all that. And then Kirantana, I took my own name. I had one of the Tantra teachers I had gave me 3 names: Karanta, which was male, She Domtana, which is female, and La'a, which was a child. So I said, I don't want to handle all that. So I just put it all together and made it Kirantana. And it was important because, you know, when you're born, your parents give you your name, and then your spiritual teacher gives you a name. And I said, but part of taking responsibility and choosing your own path is I took my own name, what it means to me. Kirantana, actually, you can find it in Rehas. It means God's celebration.
Beautiful.
That's what I want to be. I want to be in celebration. That's how I got the name.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Do you want to share any more about some of this historical stuff, or do you want to bring us a little bit more to some of the things you're excited about present?
I'd rather move to the present, you know, where it went.
You've given us a great lens historically, and also how you healed yourself from really traumatic stages.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I did use, you know, I've kept up Kundalini Yoga, like I said, the basics, maybe 5 things I do over all these years. And it keeps me healthy. It keeps the aura intact, you know, so you don't take in the society. And then that gave birth to the ideas that, no, you don't just accept everything. You learn about aura, and you learn about, one of the things I did keep was Nabi Kriya, you know, because in martial arts it helped, and it helps in my singing too. But that's power coming from the belly. So it's like, you don't allow the world to come in at you anymore. It's like you start pushing back at the world.
That's right.
It's Khalsa, you know, that's like chanting with swords.
I love that visual.
And now I apply that to almost everything I do. When I'm on stage singing, I'm killing demons. I'm at war.
Well, I know you've done, based on what I read in the bio you shared with me, I know you've done some more recent work in Cairo that was pretty amazing. Do you want to bring us to there, or is there something you want to fill us in before you got to Cairo?
What I want to say about all that is that, well, I got off the subject. I took care of all the problems with the money and stuff early on. I just didn't. All the years I've been teaching, I've never charged for class. It's always been by donation, and I've done very well. And then later, when I hooked back up with then I taught teaching partner Sukhmander Singh, for a lot of years we've taught together, and he's never charged.
Yeah,
He was a craftsman and a carpenter and a builder, and he loved that, and so he didn't want to make his money as a teaching, and I didn't either. So all these things we provided, it was just this crazy idea, Take Bahadur going, this has to be done. Innocent people are being slaughtered here, and that's the idea that starts the whole thing. And then using the prayers, using Nitnem as my sword and shield, and then the money starts coming. I meet the two absolute perfect people to do this with, and then the money starts coming, and then they take over. And I think you're going to show a clip later of that program.
Now, this was the one in Palestine, right?
Palestine, yeah.
Palestine, okay.
And that's another thing I want to say about Kundalini. That's what makes your Kundalini come up. It's like I taught these two women who are just warriors to the max anyway. Well, the first two of them had been shot down by Zionist soldiers, 3 times.
Mm.
They just are unstoppable. These are the kind of students I want to teach, and because they know what it's like. You only got 5 minutes to live, and you got to do it with that intensity. And then I got kicked out of Palestine, and they immediately took over, and they started their first retreat. The style of yoga I taught was to go teach in prisons and refugee camps.
Wow.
There's a lot of them there. So these were young girls, young teen girls, and children who have been thrown in jail, Palestinians. And these women, I was teaching them how to teach in those situations, and that right away, as soon as I left, they started the whole program. We raised money in Egypt for them, and they took these kids just coming right out of prison and started their first weekend retreat, teaching them Kundalini, teaching them chanting, they teaching Ashtanga, they're teaching Vipassana, things that these young girls have never, ever even been exposed to before. This is a big deal. You see in the clip, they're sitting there in the dark, chanting and singing and meditating. That's unheard of there. And then those girls now are going back to their village to teach the young kids there. When you see that, you drop a seed and you see that these people give their best.
Amazing.
Pass that seed on.
Yeah.
That's all you need as a teacher. That's what makes your life.
Mm.
So then I went to Cairo, and it was the same thing. My first students were, I don't give any graduation certificates or anything like that unless they're out there teaching. So that's another way I control the whole thing.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so the main girl that I taught there is, she already had a dream of, she has her degrees in business. And then she wanted to go and start, she goes into very poor villages and takes Muslim girls, very poor Muslim girls who have no chance of getting out of there. And she teaches them to start their own business, and then that like starts separating. And now she's teaching them meditation and Kundalini and stuff. And that begins to separate them from this cultural miasms of the Muslim culture is very macho and stuff. And the reason I wanted to stay there and do that was because the women in the Islamic countries are starting to really take off.
Mm.
They're coming alive. They're the ones that are going to save the whole thing. What people don't know about the Quran is that there's actually more rights in the Quran for women than any other religion in the world, but it was taken from them. The sultans with all their excess and all that stuff like that. And now that's all, these women are very educated, very smart, very capable of even running those countries. And again, I walked right into that, you know, and someone set up these things, retreats out in the desert in the Sinai, where I was living with the Bedouins out there, and they were teaching about the Quran and the Muslim culture. And so I got the whole blast. And then these women teaching them how to meditate and do the yoga. And with the idea, I'm not just teaching this to make, you know, so you can go out and teach and make money at this. I want you to think of something innovative and go do it. Mm. And all these women are already doing that. And so the one, she doesn't like publicity, so I don't tell her name, you know. She, while she was doing the yoga, she won a scholarship to London School of Economics, from the best in the world, and she went got her master's. And a year came back, and she, you know, got a hold of me, and she says, I'm back from London. It was so great. Now I'm back in this, you know, she's a little poor town in Cairo, and part of Cairo. And she says, now I'm just sitting here in my parents' bedroom, you know, and they all live, she's pretty poor, and live in a little house together and stuff. And now what do I do? So I said, well, start chanting, you know. I said, you chant anything you want, but you start. And you start doing Nabi Kriya because you're upset, you know, and she did. Within 2 weeks, she got the job doing exactly what she wanted to do, from some big group in Europe who funded her. And now she's in charge of all of Egypt. She gets to hire all the people who works under her. And they go into these villages and they teach women how to start their own businesses and stuff. And then on the, you know, with that, she's starting to throw in the meditation program. And all of that is provided for free. I don't charge in teacher training. I was doing teacher training. None of these people would ever have enough money. What does it cost now? Like $5,000 or something. Mm-hmm. It take them years and years to get that. So once I saw what was happening here and I saw the quality of these people, again, you only learn how to do it when you show up and see what needs to be done. Right. And then I know exactly what to do, how to present it, you know, and you know, the hada for making money, you know, hada.
Yeah.
I told them how to do that. And I said, the important thing is that tongue. Yeah. It's like banging on the pituitary gland, bang, bang, like a boxing bag, you know? Yeah. Hada. I said, once you understand how to do that, then I just change it to Allah.
I love that.
Yeah, and then it just took off, you know, and more came and to learn this stuff. They do understand exactly what I was doing. They, you know, they wanted to hear stories about the gurus. And so they began to say, I said, you know what, if all this stuff about cultural appropriation, mm-hmm. Yeah, forget all that. You know, the whole Sikh religion is approbation. If you read Shams, Rumi's teacher, and he describes the path, if you hadn't seen Shams, you said, this is Sikhism. You know, but nobody thought in those ways that somebody stole something those days. It was like, it was natural, it was passed down. It came from God, and you're going to pass it down. You see in the Guru Granth Sahib a lot of their particular ways of describing God in certain passages. It'll get passed down to all those other things because it's so beautiful. They want to keep passing it down. You know, all that stuff is silly.
Yeah, I just think you have much more holistic viewpoint of things because of your life experience, where, you know, cultural misappropriation really becomes a serious thing when people are using elements and don't trace it back to the fact that, yeah, you can just change out mantras if it's getting the same technology, or being able to use and create sound current with your tongue and your own body instrument. Like, being able to have critical thinking to be able to realize, no, you don't have to only do that. That's a starting place. And then you have to carry it along or adapt it to who or the environment that needs it. And I think that's a very, very important piece, because cultural misappropriation is a thing, but it doesn't have to be if we can open up and expand that conversation for it to be a healthy conversation.
Yeah.
And knowing origins of things and speaking to that, you know.
And they look and see why you're using it, how you're using it, what you're using it for.
Yes.
And
what's the intention behind it? What do you know about it versus what are you regurgitating? Have you had an exalted experience, or are you just parroting information and not letting it distill through your own soul?
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you feel like now is a good time to share that clip?
Yeah, I think we're done, right? This is the end.
We're moving there. I think so. I just want you to intro it, because listeners won't be able to see the video, but those that are able to watch the video will see it. So give us an understanding of what people will be hearing and seeing.
This was a weekend that the teachers in Palestine put on, where they got all these young girls right out of prison, and they took them out for a weekend, and started teaching them all this stuff, and rehabilitate them, showing them how to rehabilitate themselves, and to teach it. And it's short, but I don't know. I'm so proud of it. I'm so proud of them. And I wanted to show that. I want, the reason I want to show it in this room is I hope people understand I'm not trying to draw attention to, my projects and my stuff. I'm saying I love this, and I'm proud of this work, and I'm proud of this, of these women. And this is how you do it. This is how you heal yourself. And like I said, to see them do this and pass it on. And then she told me, now some of the young girls you'll see in this group are already starting to teach it. And I wanted people to see how magnificent they're so strong. These girls just came right out of prison, and they about to be in the world. They want to be back in prison with their sisters. That's what kind of quality of people they are. And what I'm trying to say by it is don't do what I did. Don't, you're not, it would take a lot of training, and I do train people to do that, but I haven't in a while, to actually go in the war zones. But they were there. They're in it all the time, every day.
Yeah.
And to see how, to find your own way of doing this, and feel the joy of that. Yeah. That's what keeps you going. And all these arguments and remembering, like I said, I remember the tip of the sword. You get caught up in worrying about. I had when I was gone from 3HO for 25 years, that was peaceful. It was great. I never thought of Yogi Bhajan or any of this stuff. And so once you see things like this, and you see people change, and you see them growing, none of that means anything. It falls away, because you if you get caught up, like I said, in the 4-person attack, you got to deal with it, throw it away. It's gone, it's gone, it's gone, it's gone. The only thing is you need to know is what's right in front of you. And that's how you heal yourself. And I'm hoping that it'll explode ideas in people who still want to teach in their heads. And
yeah, I love it. So this is a short video clip of the Jericho retreats. It's a yoga and meditation retreat, Catharsis, Palestine, as we've been hearing from George McMillian. I'm going to share this clip.
Here.
من كل العذاب ينسجون الحرية ينسجون الحرية ينسجون الحرية. سوايا كيف حسيت؟
مبسوطة كثير.
هاي أول مرة؟
هاي نفسي أجربها من أنا صغيرة.
عن جد؟ كيف الشعور فوق؟
حلو. شعور جديد.
إيش إسراء؟
مبسوطة كثير، مش خايفة كثير يعني، هي أول مرة بس متحمسة، لسه ما بلشناش بس بين إشي حلو. مبسوطين كثير كثير.
حبيتوا اليوغا؟
شكرا كثير.
كان أيام اليوغا أصلا.
إيه؟
أحلى إشي اليوغا.
اليوم كله حلو بفعاليات ونفس ما يخلصش اليوم.
لسه في بكرة.
هاي اسمه
عن التراث. عن سيديا.
بها من جنين، عمري 19 سنة، أسيرة محررة. احنا جينا هون عشان نعمل فعالية معاكي، وكانت بتجنن. اليوغا والسباحة والخيل كله كان بجنن، وإن شاء الله كل البنات يطلعوا ونعمل نفس هاي الفعالية.
نعمل هيك أكمل مرة على هوا نفسنا، وبس نلاحظ كيف الشعور، شو الأفكار اللي بتصير تطلع لما إحنا نحرك جسمنا مع نفسنا حركة بطيئة. شهيق، بنفتح نقدر نخلي عيوننا مغمضة أو نركز على النقطة اللي اخترناها، بس تسمعوا إرشادات صوتي.
إنه أعمل اليوغا بعد ما شفت كيف إنه ارتحت بعد ما أنتوا عطيتونا إياها. الإشي كان كثير حلو وبكم الطاقة السلبية وبعطينا طاقة إيجابية.
أنا اسمي إسراء، عمري 19، اعتقلت كان عمري 17 سنة، وصار لي شهرين بروحة، سجنت 2.5 وهلا رجعت التقيت مع صاحباتي بفضل انه الاشي اللي عملتوه، وكيفنا كثير في هاليومين، وعن جد اشي مفيد وبغير من نفسيتنا كثير، وانبسطنا كثير، ونتمنى انه الشيء يرجع هيك ينعاد معنا. شكرا لكم كثير.
كانت تجربة كثير حلوة إنه قضيناها هاليومين مع الأسيرات المحررات، لأنه قد ما إحنا بنفكر إنه إحنا جايين نفيدهم قد ما هم كثير بيطلعوا بفيدونا، وفي الآخر إشي بنحس قديش عن جد نحن بنكون شبكة متصلين ببعض. أيا كانت القضايا اللي إحنا عم نمشي فيها وعم نسير فيها، كلنا هدفنا واحد، إنه نكون كثير مبسوطين. فجدا تجربة بتمنى إنها تنعاد سواء هون أو في مناطق تانية بتعاني من نفس اللي إحنا بنعاني.
وأنا التي أنسجها نساء من كل العذاب ينسجون الحرية من كل العذاب ينسجون الحرية ينسجون الحرية.
Life is a web and I am the one weaving it. I love that.
That's a whole brand new concept to them, you know.
Yeah, that was so beautiful. And just for them to share their experiences with the yoga of being able to relax and the psychological benefits, and just to witness, you know, how that's able to show up in environments and look differently based on the way that the environment and the people in that environment need it.
Yeah. It started out, like I said, I had no particular plan, but when I started meeting the young kids, and I said, look, why are you going and you're going up to the reason most of them got thrown in jail is throwing rocks. So they go to all the protests and stuff, and they throw rocks and they'll shoot them down. They'll kill them, or they'll throw them, capture them, throw them in prison. Zionists. And I says, why are you doing that? Why don't you why aren't you playing to win? You know, what's good is it for you to get killed? If the Israelis knew what I was doing, they'd be paying me for this. And I said, look, take, you know, this, I'm going to show you something to take control of your rage, and then take that energy and create something innovative, something so beautiful that people will come and want to help you. And then it's easy to get news people in there, you know, and change the narrative. Change the narrative. The world thinks the Palestinians are victims, and they think they're victims. As you change the narrative that, like, you look and see who under this pressure that they're under all the time, killings all the time. When I was there, we got attacked by the Israelis twice, and change the world narrative and take control of this, and do it in a peaceful way. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to go out and throw rocks, you know. But then they had a couple of these classes, and they just, this feels better. Yes, this feels better, and this is true fighting, because this is, you're going to carry this on, and you're going to change the story around the world. There's the one girl, the blonde curly hair girl. Ayad Tamimi's world famous, you know, and she's like one of their most famous warriors, and to see her doing this, and that was like one of the gifts. She just like got all set up, and the young women follow her all over all over the Islamic world.
Wow.
And Ashir has been out there on the front lines, you know, getting shot at, and she's every march. I went out and marched with them, you know, she marches everything. She's always the loudest voice in the front of the line, and they shot her down. Just healed herself. They broke her neck, stepped on her neck. She healed her neck by doing yoga and went on a vegetarian diet and doing breathing. And that kind of people. And so,
and when you have to, when you have no other choice, like what you're saying, when you
right.
have to, when you're in the line of fire, and that's a huge turning point, because you realize it's in me or it's not going to be.
Yeah, I have a lot of compassion, you know, for what people have to go through in America. You know, we've had a lot of, Yogi Bhajan certainly was not the only one who did all this stuff. But I really don't like to teach here too much anymore, because I don't find that intensity. And after 50 years of teaching, you know, to teach a class with a lot of people are going, I wonder if he fucks his students, you know, and shit, man, I don't deserve that. I'm a better teacher than that. And I would rather get those people and train them to come over and do this work.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, I would love to move into your song. Would you like to share with us a little bit about why you chose the song?
Yeah, one last thing I want to say before we go into
Anything
that.
else you'd like to say is fine.
To the people from Miri Piri, you know, that I've been listening to in the Primka room, and I just want to say you're wonderful, and don't make fun of yourself anymore for saving the world. I mean, you people are going to save the world. I save the world every day in Nitnam, you know, and it's like, I think you guys are fabulous, and I love them so much. They all have that same kind of vibe, like, you know, what the fuck, what happened, you know, but they're not broken at all, you know, they're just like taking time, and God, I would love to take them over there and train them how to do this. All right, that's the song. The song represents to me pacing the cage, because it has that lion imagery from the Sikh Dharma, you know, the lions. And my experience in 3HO and a lot of the spiritual path is an addiction in itself. And that's the way, that's the difference between a good teacher and a teacher who sets it up so that he, you know, controls and manipulates.
Mm.
There's a big difference. And a lot of the kriyas and a lot of the stuff we were taught, it puts you in this perpetual wanting. If you look at the creeds, it's always for something. This will make you richer. This will make you more sexy. This will give you this. It's always something to give, you know, and you never reach having. You know, and that's why the Indian Sikhs are so ticked off at, you know, the 3HO Sikhs, the Kundalini Sikhs, because, well, for instance, like in Japji, and the story goes that Yogi Ji and BBG went through all the verses and they assigned this will do this for you, and this will do this for you, this will do this for you. The 21st verse, if you say it 8 times, it brings you money. You know, it's like, if you just do that, if you've heard the whole, if people had really heard the whole chant, the whole Japji, you know, it's like, that was what the gurus were trying to get rid of, is do this as a magical formula to make this happen. It's all given to you. You can't take it. It's given to you, and you don't ever get it because you're trying to take it. What giver wants to give, you know, when you're trying to take all the time? And so that's the Japji is from the guru. It is the guru. The sound is the guru. So it'll give you everything you need as you step on the line to do what you need to do. But to sit back and go, I'm going to do this magical formula so this and this can happen to me. It's like, that's what they're outraged for, because the guru's banis and the Guru Granth Sahib is genius, spiritual and musical genius, you know, and I chose that as my guru. Like I said, I'd already had experiences of God, but I chose that because I'm a musician and I understood what was happening with it. And I didn't want to get into Jap Sahib. It's ferocious. You know, I could do it really fast and hard, and I'm swinging swords, and it was a way that where I don't have to lose the ferocity, but I don't have to fight like that anymore either. And so the whole experience of 3HO for me was waiting, pacing the cage, you know, waiting for something to happen, doing all these tricks so something would happen and I would be a better person, or I'd have more money, or this or that. And it just never panned off. So it was just constant waiting. So that's what this song represents to me.
Thank you. And listeners, for copyright purposes, we'll only be listening to a short little clip of this, just so we can stay in integrity.
No matter how I squint, I cannot make out what it's pointing toward. Sometimes you feel like you've lived too long. Days drip slowly on the page. You catch yourself pacing the cage.
And that is Pacing the Cage by Bruce Cockburn. I encourage you to listen to the whole clip when you get a chance.
Yeah, check that out when you have a chance. Beautiful song.
So beautiful. I did listen before our podcast together. I want to thank you for your time today and invite you to just, if there's anything last that you want to leave listeners with, or any last story you'd like to share with us.
No, I think we've done it all. I just want to say, the people in the Primka room, I 100% with you, but I got to go. I got things to do now.
Thank you. Kirantana, I just want to say it's just been such a pleasure to hear and learn from you and to get your perspective and just to hear the stories that you bring forth from all the different walks of life and experiences. And I know that you are a musician and a recording artist and a published author and a devout Amritdhari-Udasi Sikh, and your wisdom in your experience has meant a lot for us to get a glimpse into. So thank you.
thank you. I want to thank you too. I really enjoyed this. Guru Nishan and I talked a couple of times before we did this because we wanted to give something special to all of you. And thank you so much for your work.
Absolutely. It is totally a service of love. I want to again thank you for taking the time. I know you had doubts about wanting to go here and kind of replay old history, and the lens that you offer, I know, ripples and creates a sound current that will impact and support a lot of people's healing. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I didn't want to go there. I won't even listen to this after it's over.
I honor you for that. And at the same time, I know so many people are appreciative. Thank you. Thank you again. This is another episode of the Uncomfortable Conversations podcast, the untold stories of the 3HO Kundalini Yoga community. I'm your host, Guru Nishan. This is a wrap for 2020 and look forward to seeing you in the new year with new episodes. Have an amazing rest of your day.